The story of Rhaenyra Targaryen is one of ambition, betrayal, and catastrophic loss, particularly when it comes to her children. The Targaryen civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons was fought over her claim to the Iron Throne, and in the end, the price of that war was paid for with the lives of almost every child she bore. It's a heartbreaking thread, woven through both the pages of George R.R. Martin's books and the unfolding drama of the House of the Dragon television series. Rhaenyra had a total of 6 children throughout her life, 3 sons from her first marriage, though widely believed to be the bastards of Ser Harwin Strong, and 2 legitimate sons plus a stillborn daughter from her second marriage to her uncle, Daemon Targaryen. Let's look at the devastating way each of these young lives was cut short by the fire and blood of their parents' conflict. The first of Rhaenyra's children to die was her only daughter, Princess Visenya Targaryen, and her passing was a direct result of the political turmoil that was tearing the family apart. This event is shown at the end of the first season of House of the Dragon. After the death of her father, King Viserys I, Rhaenyra's half-brother Aegon II usurped the throne, a blatant act of betrayal and treason against her rightful claim. This shock, rage, and the extreme stress of being suddenly crowned queen and threatened with war brought on Rhaenyra's labor far too early. She was not yet ready to give birth, and the conditions on Dragonstone were far from the pampered environment of the Red Keep. In the show, the scene is intensely personal and brutal. Rhaenyra refuses help, driven by an almost savage fury. She labors alone, screaming and cursing her half-brother Aegon and his mother Alicent for stealing her crown, and for the ensuing war that caused this tragedy. The baby, Visenya, is stillborn. In the show, the baby's umbilical cord is tragically wrapped around her neck. However, the books Fire and Blood describe Visenya's death even more gruesomely, illustrating the Targaryens' deep connection to dragons and their sometimes monstrous side. The book states that Visenya was not only stillborn, but also physically deformed, described as a twisted and malformed with a hole in her chest where her heart should have been, and a stubby, scaled tail. This detail is incredibly significant because it plays into the superstition that when a Targaryen is born deformed, it's considered a sign of a dark omen or a dragon gone wrong. For Rhaenyra, this loss immediately hardened her resolve. She blamed the Greens entirely for her daughter's death, viewing Visenya as the first true casualty of the war. The pain of this loss transformed her fury into a cold, focused determination for vengeance against her enemies. Lucerys Velaryon, the death that began the war. The death of her second son, Prince Lucerys Velaryon, or Luke, is the true catalyst that ignites the Dance of the Dragons. He was only 13 when the storm of war swallowed him whole. This is the moment when the cold war of words and political maneuvering officially turns into a hot war of fire and blood. Rhaenyra, now established as queen on Dragonstone, was determined to secure allies for her cause. Her 2 eldest sons, Jacaerys and Lucerys, known as her strong boys, were dispatched as envoys to fly on their dragons to key houses in the realm. Luke, the younger of the 2, was sent to Storm's End, the seat of House Baratheon, a journey considered less perilous than the one given to his older brother. Luke's mission was to present Rhaenyra's terms and secure their loyalty. Unfortunately, Luke arrives at Storm's End only to find his uncle, Aemon Targaryen, already there. Aemond, the one-eyed prince who had lost his eye to a younger Luke's dagger in a childhood fight, was there to negotiate for the Greens, and he brought the enormous dragon Vhagar with him. Aemon did not forget the injury he had suffered, and in the book he sees this as his chance for revenge. In the show, Luke holds to his mother's command to act only as an envoy and not a fighter, delivering his message despite Aemon's mockery. Aemon demands that Luke give up his eye as a debt for his own missing eye. Luke refuses, leaves and mounts his young smaller dragon Arax to fly home in a raging storm. Aemond, flying Vhagar, pursues him. The show attempts to portray Luke's death as an accident, suggesting Aemond intended only to frighten Luke, but lost control of Vhagar when Arax blasted the larger dragon with a small plume of flame. Vhagar, acting on instinct, quickly tears Arax and Luke apart. In the book, the account is less ambiguous about Aemond's intent. Aemond chases Luke and Arax down with the intent to kill them. There is no question of a loss of control. It is a clear act of murder and a violation of the sacred law of envoys. Arax's body is later found washed up on a beach, but Luke's body is never recovered, only his cloak. The news of Luke's death breaks Rhaenyra completely. For days she is consumed by grief, unable to speak, eat or move. It is her husband, Daemon, who eventually forces her to move past the immediate grief, reminding her that they have a war to fight. This tragedy becomes the central motivation for Rhaenyra and Daemon to hire the assassins, Blood and Cheese, to execute the terrible son-for-a-son revenge, which sees Aegon II's heir, Jacaerys, murdered. Luke's death is the wound that turns Rhaenyra's sorrow into a relentless burning hatred. Not long after the murder of Lucerys, Rhaenyra's oldest and most capable son, Prince Jacaerys Velaryon, or Jace, meets his end in what becomes known as the Battle of the Gullet. Jace was Rhaenyra's heir to the Iron Throne and the Prince of Dragonstone. He was the most politically astute and diplomatic of her sons, and it was his mission that had been the most successful, securing the support of the houses of the North and the Vale. Upon returning to Dragonstone, Jace finds his mother heartbroken and their cause desperately needing military success. He takes command of the Black's forces, including the Dragon Seeds, new lower-born dragon riders who pledged their allegiance to Rhaenyra. The Battle of the Gullet was a crucial naval engagement where the Triarchy, a coalition of city-states from Essos and allies of the Greens, sent a massive fleet to attack the Black's supply lines and blockade Dragonstone. Jace planned a daring attack, leading his own dragon, Vermax, along with the other Dragon Seeds, to engage the enemy fleet. In the books, Jace rides Vermax into the thick of the battle. Vermax, trying to destroy a Triarchy warship, is severely wounded and crashes into the ship, which is engulfed in flames and sinking. Jace, separated from his dying dragon, leaps onto another galley, fighting desperately with a sword. He is ultimately killed by crossbow bolts as he is overwhelmed by the enemy soldiers, and his body sinks beneath the waves of the gullet. Jace's death is a shattering blow to Rhaenyra, even more so than Luke. Losing her heir, her oldest son, the one with the best claim and the most sense of duty, stripped away Rhaenyra's strategic anchor. It was the moment that, according to the historical accounts, she lost all hope of a merciful end to the war and became consumed entirely by a thirst for vengeance. The loss of Rhaenyra's last remaining son from her first marriage, Prince Joffrey Velaryon, is a deeply tragic moment caused by a desperate and impulsive act. Joffrey was the youngest of the strong boys, still a child in the grand scheme of the war. After the deaths of his two older brothers, he was now the Prince of Dragonstone and Rhaenyra's heir, a title he was far too young to hold. Following a major turning point in the war, Rhaenyra successfully captured the capital, King's Landing. However, her victory was short-lived. The small folk of the city, starved and manipulated by whispers of dragon horror and the Greens' propaganda, erupted in a massive riot known as the Storming of the Dragon Pit. The commoners, terrified of the dragons, stormed the Dragon Pit, intending to kill all the captive dragons inside. On Dragonstone, Joffrey, realizing the danger to the dragons and his mother's cause, makes a terrible decision. His own dragon, Tyrax's, was chained and inaccessible in the Dragon Pit. Ignoring the chain of command and his mother's express orders to stay safe, the young prince rushes to the stable where Rhaenyra's dragon, Syrax, was kept. He mounts Syrax, intending to fly to the aid of the besieged capital. Syrax, however, only knew Rhaenyra as her rider. When Joffrey tried to command her, she became agitated and confused. As Syrax launched into the sky, she bucked and shook off her unwanted rider. Joffrey, who was not a seasoned dragon rider like his older brothers and had not properly secured himself, was thrown from the dragon's back. He fell hundreds of feet onto the cobblestones of the outer courtyard of the Dragon Pit. In the books, Joffrey dies instantly from the impact, breaking every bone in his body, a horrific and unnecessary death. His body was then mutilated by the rioters for his possessions. Joffrey's desperate attempt to be a hero, spurred by the deaths of his brothers, resulted in the loss of Rhaenyra's fourth child and a crushing moral defeat for the Blacks. It was another sign that the gods, or fate, were directly against her. The loss of Joffrey and the Dragon Pit was a key turning point that forced Rhaenyra to finally flee the capital, her short reign over, her spirit utterly shattered. Technically, the title of the video suggests Rhaenyra lost all of her children. While 4 of her 6 children died during the Dance of the Dragons, 2 of them survived, Aegon Targaryen and Viserys Targaryen, her sons with Daemon. However, their experiences were so traumatic that, in a profound emotional and physical sense, Rhaenyra also lost them. Aegon Targaryen, known as Aegon the Younger, would ultimately become King Aegon III after the war, earning the unfortunate moniker of the Broken King, or Aegon the Dragonbane, the latter not for killing a dragon, but for his profound fear of them. This fear was born from witnessing unimaginable horror. Aegon was sent to safety with his brother Viserys early in the war, but their ship was attacked by the Triarchy fleet during the Battle of the Gullet. Jace's intervention saved them temporarily, but Aegon was forced to watch as his older brother, Jace, fell from the sky and died in the sea. He was then captured and spent a terrifying period of time as a captive, constantly on the brink of being executed or ransomed. The most devastating moment for Aegon, however, came at the very end of Rhaenyra's life. After fleeing King's Landing following Joffrey's death, Rhaenyra and a few loyalists made their way to Dragonstone, only to find it captured by her half-brother, King Aegon II, and his dragon, Sunfire. Aegon the Younger was forced to watch in horror as his own mother, Queen Rhaenyra, was cornered by Aegon II, and then devoured alive by the crippled but still ferocious Sunfire. This deeply scarring experience left the young prince permanently traumatized and melancholic. He never smiled again for the rest of his life. Though he survived and became king, the boy Rhaenyra knew and loved was lost forever, replaced by a broken and haunted ruler. Aegon died in 157 AC at the age of 36, and according to the people he seemed much older. The war had aged him and grief had hollowed him out. He never really left the shadow of the dance. Rhaenyra's youngest son, Viserys Targaryen, was believed dead for years, which for a grieving mother is an even more torturous loss than a confirmed death. This is why he is often counted among the lost children. Viserys was only a toddler when he and his older brother Aegon were sent away from the war to safety in Pentos. Their ship was attacked, and when their boat was boarded, Viserys vanished. His older brother Aegon was found clinging to a plank, but Viserys was gone. Everyone assumed he had drowned in the turbulent waters of the gullet. The news of Viserys' death was a deep pain for Rhaenyra, coming so soon after the murder of Luke. She grieved for her baby son, believing him lost to the sea forever. However, in a twist of fate, Viserys was not dead. He had been captured by a ship from the Triarchy and sold into slavery in the east. He was eventually bought by a merchant in Lies, where he lived under false name, eventually rising to become an apprentice in a powerful trading company. He only returned to Westeros and his now king brother, Aegon III, years after the war had ended. Viserys also went on to become the hand of the king to 3 monarchs, and finally became a king at the age of 49. So while he was physically alive, Rhaenyra lost Viserys in a more agonizing way than the others. She lived and died for years believing her youngest child had drowned because of her war. She never knew he had survived, never saw him again, and was robbed of the hope and comfort that his survival would have offered her. The emotional loss for Rhaenyra was absolute. The tragic sequence of these deaths demonstrates the true cost of the Dance of the Dragons. Rhaenyra Targaryen's journey from the realm's delight to the Black Queen is marked by the devastating loss of her future, piece by piece. It begins with the stillborn Visenya, a loss of potential that fuels her hatred. Then comes the murder of her son and envoy Lucerys, a betrayal that starts the war. Next is the death of her heir Jacaerys, a strategic loss that shatters her cause's foundation. This is followed by the terrible accident that kills Joffrey, a moral defeat that breaks her spirit. Finally, she loses the emotional essence of Aegon through trauma, and the very existence of Viserys through his presumed death and captivity. Rhaenyra's own end, being eaten by her half-brother's dragon, is a devastating final act, but the true tragedy of her story is the sheer devastation of her family. Her ambition, her rightful claim, and her refusal to yield resulted in a fire that consumed her sons, leaving her with nothing but ashes and vengeance. The war was never just a battle for a chair, but a brutal annihilation of one mother's entire lineage and hope for the future.